autumn air in Philadelphia had that particular bite to it that signaled the real arrival of fall, not the calendar fall, but the kind where you could see your breath in the early evening, where the leaves didn't just change color, but actually started letting go of their branches, swirling down onto sidewalks and collecting in doorways. Emily Carter pulled her cardigan tighter around her shoulders as she wiped down the last booth in the diner. The old clock on the wall, the one with the faded Coca-Cola logo that had been there since before she was born, read 9:47 p.m., 13 minutes past official closing time, but who was counting? The diner was small, almost cramped, with a counter that had seen better decades and booths with red vinyl seats that were held together more by duct tape and hope than by their original stitching. But it was clean. Emily made sure of that. Every night she stayed late to wipe down every surface to make sure the salt and pepper shakers were filled, to ensure that when the morning shift arrived, everything would be ready. It wasn't just about the job. It was about pride. It was about control, in a life that often felt like it was spinning away from her. Outside, the streetlights cast an orange glow onto the empty parking lot. A few cars passed on the main street, their headlights cutting through the deepening darkness. The neighborhood was quiet this time of night. The dinner rush long over, the late-night crowd not yet emerged. This was the in-between time, when the city seemed to pause and take a breath. Emily moved behind the counter, checking that the coffee machine was off, that the cash register was locked. She'd already counted out the till, separated the bills, filled out the deposit slip. Muscle memory at this point. She'd been working at Eddie's Diner for 3 years, ever since she'd moved to Philadelphia from a small town in Pennsylvania that she preferred not to think about. 25 years old, she thought as she untied her apron. 25, and still serving coffee and eggs to strangers. Still living in a studio apartment with a radiator that clanked all night. Still putting off the dreams she'd had when she first arrived in the city. College, maybe, or art school. Something more than this. But dreams cost money, and money was always just out of reach. She shook her head, dismissing the familiar spiral of thoughts. No point dwelling on it. Not tonight. Not when she was tired and just wanted to go home, heat up some leftover pasta, and watch something mindless on her laptop until she fell asleep. Emily grabbed her jacket from the hook by the kitchen door and shrugged it on. She did one final sweep of the diner with her eyes. Everything in its place. Good. She reached for the light switches, ready to plunge the space into darkness when she heard it. A sound from outside, from the back of the building. She paused, her hand hovering over the switches. It wasn't unusual to hear sounds out there. The diner shared an alley with a small grocery store and a closed-down dry cleaner. Sometimes raccoons got into the dumpsters. Sometimes homeless individuals sought shelter behind the buildings, especially as the weather turned colder. But this sound was different. It was heavier. A scraping sound, like something being dragged. And then, was that a groan? Emily's heart rate picked up slightly. She told herself it was nothing. Probably just the wind knocking something over. Or maybe old Mr. Chen from the grocery store taking out late trash. Nothing to worry about. But her feet didn't move toward the front door. Instead, she found herself walking toward the back exit, the one that led to the alley. Her hand was already on the doorknob before her brain caught up with her body. Don't be stupid. A voice in her head warned. It's late. It's dark. You don't know what's out there. But another part of her, the part that had always been too curious, too unable to leave well enough alone, needed to know, needed to check. What if someone needed help? What if it was Mr. Chen and he'd fallen? She turned the lock and eased the door open. The alley was darker than the front parking lot, lit only by a single bulb above the diner's back entrance and the ambient light from the street beyond. The dumpsters cast long shadows. The smell of old grease and autumn decay hung in the air. Emily's breath puffed out in small clouds as she stepped outside, leaving the door propped open behind her. "Hello?" she called out, her voice sounding smaller than she intended. "Is someone there?" Silence. Just the distant hum of traffic and the rustle of leaves skittering across pavement. Emily took another step forward, her eyes adjusting to the dimness. She scanned the alley, looking for the source of the sound. Nothing seemed out of place. Maybe she'd imagined it, maybe. Then she saw him. At first, her brain couldn't make sense of what she was looking at. There was a man lying on the ground near the far dumpster, partially hidden in shadow. He was curled on his side, one arm pressed against his torso, the other reaching out as if he'd been trying to pull himself forward. Emily's breath caught. For a moment she was frozen, every instinct screaming at her to run back inside. Lock the door. Call the police. But then the man moved. Just slightly. A shudder that ran through his whole body, and that small movement snapped her into action. She rushed forward, her footsteps echoing in the confined space. As she got closer, details emerged in the dim light. The man was large, broad-shouldered, wearing what looked like an expensive dark suit that was now torn and dirty. His hair was dark, cut short, and there was something wet on his shirt, something dark that spread across the fabric. He was hurt, badly. Oh my God, Emily breathed, dropping to her knees beside him. Sir, can you hear me? The man's eyes opened, just barely. They were a striking light color, gray or blue, she couldn't quite tell in the darkness. They focused on her face with difficulty, as if he was trying to make sense of her presence. You need to go, he managed, his voice rough, barely above a whisper. Not safe. Emily ignored him. She'd done a basic first aid course years ago back in high school, though she'd never expected to use it like this. Her hands moved automatically, assessing. She could see now that he'd been injured. His shirt was torn on the left side, and there was a concerning amount of fluid that had soaked through the fabric and onto the pavement beneath him. I'm going to call an ambulance, she said, already reaching for her phone. No. The word came out sharp, urgent. His hand shot out, surprisingly fast for someone in his condition, and grabbed her wrist. His grip was weak but insistent. No hospitals. They'll find me. Emily stared at him. Who? Who will find you? Doesn't matter. His eyes were starting to close again. Just leave me. Forget you saw anything. But Emily couldn't do that. Every fiber of her being knew that if she left this man here, he wouldn't survive the night. The temperature was already dropping below 40 degrees. He'd lost a significant amount of fluid. He needed help, whether he wanted it or not. She made a decision. Can you stand? She asked, tucking her phone back into her pocket. If I help you, can you get inside? The man's eyes opened again, focusing on her with what looked like surprise. You're not leaving. No, Emily said firmly. I'm not. Now, can you move, or do I need to drag you? A ghost of something, respect, amusement, flickered across his face. I can move. It took several agonizing minutes, but together they managed to get him upright. He was heavy, solid muscle under the expensive suit, and he stood at least 6 feet tall, a full 8 inches taller than Emily. He leaned heavily on her, and she could feel him trembling with the effort of staying conscious. Step by painful step, they made it to the back door. Emily maneuvered them inside into the diner's small kitchen area. She guided him to a chair near the prep station and eased him down. He slumped immediately, his head falling back against the wall, his breathing labored. In the bright, fluorescent light of the kitchen, Emily could see him properly for the first time. He was probably in his late 30s, with strong, sharp features, and a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite. Even in his current state, pale, sweating, clearly in significant pain, there was something commanding about his presence. This was not a man who was used to being vulnerable, and his injuries. Emily forced herself to look clinically at the damage. His white dress shirt, what had once been white, was torn and stained on the left side of his torso. The wound beneath looked serious, but thankfully the flow had slowed somewhat. Okay, Emily said, more to herself than to him. Okay, I can do this. She moved quickly, pulling out the diner's first aid kit from under the counter. It was woefully inadequate for this situation. Some bandages, antiseptic wipes, tape, but it would have to do. She grabbed clean dish towels from the shelf and filled a large bowl with warm water. I need to see how bad it is, she said, returning to his side. I'm going to have to cut away your shirt. Is that okay? He nodded, barely. His eyes tracked her movements with an intensity that might have been unsettling under different circumstances. Watching, assessing, like he was trying to figure out who she was and why she was helping him. Emily found scissors in the first aid kit and carefully began cutting away the ruined shirt. Her hands were shaking. She couldn't help that, but she kept them as steady as possible. As the fabric fell away, she could see the full extent of the injury. It looked like he'd been stabbed or cut, a deep laceration that ran across his ribs on the left side. It was still seeping, but the flow was sluggish now. That could be good or very, very bad. She couldn't tell if anything vital had been hit. She wasn't a doctor. She was a waitress with a high school first aid certificate, but she was what he had. This is going to hurt, she warned, reaching for the antiseptic wipes. I need to clean it. I've had worse, he said, though his jaw was clenched tight. Emily worked as gently but as efficiently as she could. She cleaned the wound, wincing in sympathy every time he tensed. She pressed clean towels against it to encourage clotting, applying firm pressure despite his sharp intake of breath. She wrapped it as best she could with the materials she had, using tape to secure the bandages in place. It wasn't hospital-quality care. It wasn't even close, but it was better than leaving him in an alley to deteriorate through the night. When she was finished, Emily sat back on her heels, surveying her work. The man was still pale, still clearly in pain, but some of the terrible grayness had left his complexion. He was watching her again with those intense eyes. "Thank you," he said quietly. Emily wiped her hands on a clean towel, suddenly aware that they were trembling harder now that the immediate crisis had passed. "You need a hospital, real doctors. I did what I could, but I can't," he interrupted. "I told you, they're looking for me. If I show up at any hospital in the city, He trailed off, seeming to realize he was saying too much. Emily studied him, really looked at him. The expensive suit, even ruined. The watch on his wrist that probably cost more than she made in 6 months. The way he held himself, even injured, like someone used to authority, to respect, to power. The fact that someone had hurt him this badly, and that he was more worried about being found than about his injuries. This man was in trouble. Serious trouble. The kind of trouble that most people would run from. And yet here she was. "Who are you?" she asked. He was quiet for a long moment, as if debating how much to tell her. Finally he said, "My name is Marcus. Marcus Hale." "Emily?" she replied automatically. "Emily Carter." "Emily." He said her name slowly, like he was testing it. "You should forget you saw me tonight. Forget this happened. Kind of hard to do that when you're bleeding in my diner's kitchen." "Your diner?" "I work here. Have for 3 years." Marcus looked around the small kitchen, at the aging equipment, at the stack of order tickets waiting for tomorrow's shift. Something in his expression softened, just slightly. "You stayed late, cleaning up." It wasn't a question, but Emily answered anyway. "Every night. It's what you do." "Is it?" There was something in his tone, curiosity mixed with something else, something that sounded almost like loneliness. "Most people do the minimum. Clock out the second they can." Emily shrugged. "I'm not most people." "No," Marcus agreed, his eyes still on her face. "You're not." An awkward silence fell between them. Emily became acutely aware of the situation she was in. She was alone in the diner with a strange man who'd been seriously injured under mysterious circumstances. A man who couldn't, or wouldn't, go to the hospital. A man who'd said someone was looking for him. What had she gotten herself into? As if reading her thoughts, Marcus said, "I won't hurt you. Whatever else you might be thinking right now, know that. You helped me. That means something." "What exactly did I help you from?" Emily asked, finding her courage. "Who hurt you? Who's looking for you?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "People I used to trust. People who decided they'd rather have what I have than remain loyal." He paused, then added, "I'm in business. A specific kind of business that sometimes attracts aggressive competition." It was deliberately vague, but Emily wasn't naive. She'd lived in the city long enough to read between the lines. The expensive suit, the dangerous enemies, the inability to go to authorities. She didn't need him to spell it out. "I see," she said quietly. "Do you?" Marcus's eyes searched her face. "Because if you do, you should be running. You should be calling the police and getting as far away from me as possible." "Should I?" Emily met his gaze steadily. "Is that what you want me to do?" He was quiet for a long moment, then barely audible. "No." Something in that single word, the vulnerability, the honesty, made Emily's decision for her. She stood up, brushing off her knees. "Okay then. You stay here tonight. Rest. In the morning when you're stronger, you can go. Deal?" Marcus stared at her like she'd just spoken in a foreign language. "You're letting me stay, unless you have somewhere better to be? I don't understand you." It wasn't accusatory. It was genuinely confused. "You don't know me. You don't know what I've done, what I'm involved in. Why would you help me?" Emily considered the question. Why was she helping him? It went against every bit of common sense she possessed. But looking at him, this dangerous, mysterious man who'd shown up in her life like something out of a movie, she couldn't bring herself to turn him away. "Because someone should," she finally said. "Because you're hurt, and you need help. And because..." She paused, searching for the right words. "Because I think maybe you're not as bad as you think you are." Marcus let out a breath that might have been a laugh if he'd had the energy for it. "You're wrong about that." "Maybe," But that's not really your call, is it? Before Marcus could respond, Emily heard something that made her blood run cold. The sound of a car pulling into the parking lot outside. Headlights swept across the front windows of the diner. Marcus heard it too. His entire body went rigid, his hand moving instinctively to his side, reaching for something that wasn't there. Emily moved quickly to the front window, peering carefully through the blinds. A dark sedan had pulled up right in front of the diner, its engine running. She couldn't see inside. The windows were tinted, but someone was definitely in there, watching. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Is that them? The people looking for you? I don't know. Marcus had somehow made it to his feet despite his injuries, moving with a quiet intensity that spoke of training, of instincts honed by necessity. How many? I can't tell. The windows are dark. It's just sitting there. They stood in tense silence, watching. Seconds ticked by like hours. Emily's mouth was dry. She could hear her own pulse pounding in her ears. Then, just as suddenly as it had arrived, the car's headlights turned off. A moment later it pulled away, disappearing down the street. Emily let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. They're gone. But when she turned around, Marcus's expression was grim. They're not gone. They're circling, checking locations where I might surface. He looked at her and there was something dark and dangerous in his eyes now. A glimpse of who he really was. What he was capable of. Emily, listen to me carefully. Lock all the doors. Don't turn on any more lights. And no matter what happens tonight, stay away from the windows. Marcus, you're scaring me. Good, he said bluntly. You should be scared. This is real. This is dangerous. And I've brought it to your door. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm kitchen. So what do we do? Marcus moved back toward the kitchen, each step clearly costing him. He lowered himself back into the chair and for a moment the dangerous edge faded, replaced again by exhaustion and pain. We wait for dawn. By morning I'll have a better sense of the situation. I can make some calls, get extraction. Extraction? People I trust. People who can get me out without leading my enemies to me. Or to you. Emily nodded slowly, processing this. Okay. So we just wait. We wait, Marcus confirmed. Then, softer. I'm sorry for all of this. You deserved a quiet night and a safe walk home. Not this. Well, Emily said, surprising herself with the hint of dry humor in her voice. I did say I wanted something more exciting than serving eggs and coffee. Marcus actually smiled at that. A real smile that transformed his face, making him look younger, less dangerous. Careful what you wish for. Emily moved to the coffee maker. If they were going to be stuck here all night, they might as well have caffeine. As she measured out the grounds and filled the water reservoir, she asked, Marcus, what happened tonight? I mean, really happened? He was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. Then, I was set up, ambushed by someone in my organization. Someone I trusted. His voice was tight with barely contained anger. They lured me to a meeting, said there was a situation that needed my immediate attention. I walked right into it. But you got away. Barely. I managed to get out, but I was... He gestured to his side. Compromised. I couldn't go to any of my properties, couldn't go to my people. Anyone could be involved. So I ran. Ended up in your alley. Lucky for you, Emily said quietly, pouring 2 cups of coffee. Lucky for me, Marcus agreed, watching as she brought him a cup. Though I'm not sure luck is the right word. More like grace. An undeserved second chance delivered by a kind-hearted waitress who should have known better. Emily sat down across from him, cradling her own cup. I'm going to choose to take that as a compliment. It was meant as one. They drank their coffee in companionable silence. Outside, the city continued its nightly rhythms. Cars passing, distant sirens, the endless hum of urban life. Inside the diner, in the small bubble of fluorescent light, 2 people from completely different worlds sat together, bound by circumstance and a shared need to survive the night. Emily studied Marcus over the rim of her cup. In the harsh kitchen light, she could see the lines of pain bracketing his mouth, the exhaustion in his eyes, but she could also see intelligence there, calculation, strength. This was a man who'd built something, even if that something existed in the shadows. This was a man who people followed, who people feared, and yet, he'd thanked her for helping him. He'd apologized for putting her in danger. He'd smiled at her weak joke. Who was Marcus Hale, really? You're staring, Marcus observed, not looking away from his coffee. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure you out. Don't waste your time. I'm not that complicated. I doubt that. Marcus did look up then, meeting her eyes. What do you want to know? Emily thought about that. What did she want to know? Everything? Nothing? Why did they betray you? Money? Power? Impatience? He sighed. I run things. A certain way. With certain rules. Not everyone agrees with those rules. Some people think I'm too cautious. Too concerned with minimizing collateral impact. Collateral impact, Emily repeated. That's one way to put it. What would you prefer I say? The truth, maybe? Marcus held her gaze for a long moment. Then slowly, I try not to let innocent people get hurt. In my line of work, that makes me weak, makes me a target. Because people like me, people in my position, we're supposed to be ruthless. We're supposed to do whatever it takes to maintain power, but he trailed off, seeming to struggle with the words. I set up systems, rules, lines that don't get crossed, and someone decided those lines were negotiable. Emily absorbed this. So you're the good guy, in this story? Marcus laughed. A short, bitter sound. No, don't mistake me for something I'm not. I've done things that would horrify you, made choices that cost people dearly. I'm not a hero, Emily, but I'm trying to be less of a villain than I could be. Then maybe I should be, according to people like Vincent. Vincent? Marcus's expression darkened. My second in command. Or he was. Now he's the one trying to take everything I've built. Because you have rules. Because I have rules, Marcus confirmed. And he sees those rules as weakness. Emily set down her coffee cup. I don't think having principles is weakness. No? Marcus smiled sadly. Then you're one of very few. Another silence fell, but this one felt different. Less tense. Almost comfortable. Emily found herself relaxing slightly, the initial terror of the situation fading into something else. Not quite trust. She wasn't that naive, but a tentative understanding. This man was dangerous. That much was clear, but he wasn't dangerous to her. At least, not intentionally. And right now, in this strange, suspended moment, that was enough. What about you? Marcus asked suddenly. Why does a smart woman like you spend her nights cleaning a diner? Emily shrugged. It's a job. It's more than that. You take pride in it. I could see that in how you cleaned up, how you organized everything. That's not just going through the motions. I guess I figure if you're going to do something, you should do it right, even if it's not your dream job. And what is your dream job? Emily hesitated. She rarely talked about this with anyone. Her dreams felt too fragile, too unlikely. But something about the intimacy of the moment, the late hour, the shared danger, the strange connection forming between them, made her answer honestly. I wanted to study art, maybe teach someday, or work in a gallery, something creative, something that mattered. Why don't you? Money, time, life. Emily laughed softly. The usual reasons. I moved here 3 years ago thinking I'd save up, apply to schools. But rent is expensive, and the diner pays just enough to get by. And by the time my shift ends, I'm too tired to even think about applications. Days turn into months, months into years, and suddenly you're 25 and no closer to your dreams than when you started. Marcus was quiet, watching her with those intense eyes. You're too smart for this. Smart doesn't pay the bills. No, he agreed, but it should count for something. Before Emily could respond to that, a sound from outside made them both freeze. Footsteps in the alley. Slow, deliberate. Coming closer, Marcus was on his feet instantly, moving faster than someone with his injuries should be able to move. He pressed a finger to his lips, signaling silence, then pointed toward the dining area. He wanted her to go hide. Emily shook her head. This was her diner. She wasn't leaving him alone. The footsteps came closer, stopped right outside the back door. Emily held her breath, watching the doorknob. She'd locked it. She was sure she'd locked it. But what if she hadn't? What if whoever was out there tried the handle, found it open? A shadow passed across the small window in the door. A figure, large and broad-shouldered, looking in. Marcus had positioned himself beside the door, ready. Emily could see the tension in every line of his body, the way he was preparing to fight despite his injuries. This was a man who wouldn't go down easily. The doorknob rattled. Testing. Emily's heart was in her throat. Then mercifully the footsteps retreated, moving away, back toward the street. They waited in frozen silence for what felt like an eternity. Finally Marcus relaxed marginally, though he stayed alert. They're checking all the buildings. Systematic search. For you? For me? Emily realized she was shaking. How long will they keep looking? Until they find me, or until I eliminate the threat? Marcus turned to look at her, and his expression was serious. Emily, I need you to understand something. This isn't going to stop. Vincent won't quit until he's won, or I've stopped him. And right now I'm compromised, wounded, separated from my resources. That makes me vulnerable. And anyone associated with me. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. You're saying I'm in danger. I'm saying you're already involved. The moment you helped me, you became part of this. And I'm sorry for that. Sorrier than you can know. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the weight of his words. She should be terrified. She should be calling the police right now, regardless of what he'd said. This was insane. This was way beyond anything she'd ever dealt with. But looking at Marcus, at this dangerous, complicated man who'd shown her more honest emotion in one night than most people did in months, she found she couldn't turn away. So what do we do? She asked. Just wait here all night? I keep watch. You try to sleep if you can. I'm not sleeping. Emily, I'm not sleeping, she repeated firmly. If we're in this together, then we're in it together. So what's the plan? Really? Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, respect dawned in his eyes. You're something else, you know that? I've been told. Despite everything, he smiled. All right, here's what we do. We stay alert. We stay quiet. At dawn, I make some calls. I get people here I can trust. We get you somewhere safe, and then I handle Vincent. Handle? End this, one way or another. Emily nodded slowly. And until dawn? Until dawn, Marcus said, moving toward the front of the diner. I guard the door. And you stay back here, away from the windows. If anything happens, if anyone comes in, you run. Out the back, into the alley, and you don't look back. Understood? Marcus, promise me. His voice was hard now, commanding. Whatever happens, you survive this. Promise. Emily swallowed hard. I promise. Good. Marcus positioned himself by the front door, settling into a chair where he could see both the parking lot and the street beyond. Despite his injuries, despite the exhaustion that must be pulling at him, he sat alert, vigilant, a guardian, a protector. Emily made fresh coffee, brought him a cup. Their fingers brushed as she handed it to him, and she felt a spark of something, connection, recognition. Two people who'd found each other in impossible circumstances. Thank you, Marcus said quietly, for everything. You didn't have to do any of this. I know, Emily replied, but I couldn't leave you there. Why? It was the same question he'd asked before, but this time, Emily had a different answer. Because I think maybe we both needed this. To not be alone. Not tonight. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. Something soft and vulnerable and utterly human. Maybe you're right. Emily retreated to the kitchen, but she didn't try to sleep. Instead, she sat at the prep counter, watching the man by the door, watching the way the streetlight cast shadows across his face, watching the city through the windows, that vast, indifferent city that kept moving even as her world had turned upside down. Hours passed. The night deepened, and Emily Carter, 25-year-old waitress with dreams deferred and a life half-lived, realized that everything had changed. By the time dawn came, nothing would ever be the same. But for now, in this moment, she was exactly where she needed to be, and so was he. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, each second stretching into eternity. Emily sat at the counter, her third cup of coffee growing cold between her hands, watching Marcus maintain his vigil by the front door. He hadn't moved in over an hour, his posture rigid, his attention fixed on the street outside. The diner felt different at night, smaller somehow, more intimate. The fluorescent lights hummed their constant electric song, and outside, Philadelphia settled into its late-night rhythm. Occasional cars passed, their headlights sweeping across the walls like searchlights. Each time Marcus tensed, his hand moving instinctively to his side before relaxing again. When the vehicle continued past, Emily wondered if he even realized he was doing it, if the constant vigilance was so ingrained that it had become automatic. What kind of life did someone have to live for that to become second nature? You should rest, Marcus said without turning around. His voice was rough, strained with exhaustion and pain that he was clearly trying to hide. I could say the same to you, Emily replied. I can't afford to rest, and I can't afford to sleep while you're keeping watch over my diner like some kind of... She trailed off, searching for the right word. Guard dog? Marcus supplied, and there was a hint of dry humor in his tone. I was going to say sentinel, but sure, we can go with guard dog. This time Marcus did turn, just slightly, and Emily caught the ghost of a smile on his face. I've been called worse. I don't doubt that. The smile faded. You should, though. Doubt me, I mean. Question why you're trusting a stranger who showed up bleeding behind your building. A stranger who's brought danger to your doorstep. Emily set down her coffee cup, considering her response carefully. You keep saying that. Keep telling me I should be afraid of you, that I should run, but you know what I think? What? I think you're trying to convince yourself as much as you're trying to convince me. Like if you say it enough times, it'll become true. Like you'll become the monster you think you should be. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, almost vulnerable. You see too much. Occupational hazard of being a waitress. You learn to read people. The ones who tip well and the ones who don't. The ones who are having a bad day and need a kind word. The ones who are angry at the world and looking for someone to take it out on. Emily paused. The ones who are carrying something heavy and trying not to let anyone see. And which one am I? All of them, maybe. Except the bad tipper. I'm guessing you tip well. That actually pulled a real laugh from Marcus, though it was quickly cut short by a wince of pain. He pressed his hand to his bandaged side, breathing carefully until the spasm passed. Emily was on her feet immediately. Let me check that. Make sure you haven't reopened anything. It's fine. Marcus, you laughed for 2 seconds and nearly passed out. It's not fine. He relented, allowing her to approach. In the harsh fluorescent light, Emily could see the toll the night was taking on him. His face was pale, drawn with pain and exhaustion. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. The bandages she'd applied hours ago were showing signs of seepage. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to worry her. I need to change these, she said, already moving toward the first aid supplies. The old bandages are compromised. Emily, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I'm going to anyway. So you can either sit still and let me help, or you can be difficult about it. Your choice. Marcus studied her face, then nodded slowly. You're bossy when you want to be. You have no idea, Emily replied, gathering fresh supplies. As she worked, carefully removing the old bandages, cleaning the wound again, applying fresh dressing, a comfortable silence settled between them. Emily's hands were steadier now than they'd been the first time. She was getting used to this, she realized. To the surreal situation she'd found herself in. To Marcus himself. You're good at this, Marcus observed, watching her work. Calm. Methodical. I'm terrified, actually. But I've learned that panic doesn't help anyone. When did you learn that? Emily hesitated, her hands stilling for just a moment. When I was 16, my mom got sick. Really sick. And my dad, he couldn't handle it. He just shut down. So someone had to keep things running. Someone had to be the calm one. She resumed wrapping the bandage. That someone was me. Your mother. Is she... She recovered, eventually. But things were never quite the same after that. My dad left a year later. Said he couldn't live with the reminder of how close he'd come to losing her. Which is ironic, since leaving meant he lost her anyway. Marcus was quiet, processing this. That's why you came to Philadelphia. To get away. To start over, Emily corrected. There's a difference. I didn't run from something. I ran toward the idea of something better. Something that was mine. She secured the last of the bandaging and stepped back. Obviously, I'm still working on the better part. You underestimate yourself. Do I? Emily met his eyes. I'm 25, Marcus. I work in a diner, I live in a studio apartment with a broken heater, and my biggest accomplishment this year was finally paying off my 10-year-old car. That's not exactly the success story I imagined. Success isn't always measured in conventional terms. Easy to say when you're wearing a $1,000 suit. Marcus glanced down at his ruined clothing. Was wearing. Past tense. Despite herself, Emily smiled. Fair point. She returned to her seat at the counter, and for a moment they simply existed in the quiet space together. Outside, the city continued its endless movement. A group of people walked past, laughing loudly, their voices carrying through the glass. Normal people, Emily thought. People having a normal night. Not sitting in a closed diner with a wounded man hiding from enemies who wanted to hurt him. When had her life become so surreal? Tell me about your business, Emily said suddenly. Not the dangerous parts, just what do you actually do, day to day? Marcus shifted in his chair, considering. I manage properties, oversee operations, resolve disputes. Ensure that agreements are honored and that people under my protection remain safe. That sounds almost legitimate when you put it that way. Parts of it are. I own several restaurants, a few apartment buildings, some commercial properties. Those are completely above board. The rest? He made a vague gesture. The rest exists in the spaces between legal and illegal. Gray areas. And the people under your protection, they pay you for that? In various ways, yes. Money, loyalty, information. It's a transactional relationship, but it's also more than that, or it should be. Marcus leaned back carefully, mindful of his injuries. That's what Vincent doesn't understand. He sees it purely as business. Extract maximum value, minimize investment, but sustainable operations require trust. Require showing that you'll honor your commitments even when it's costly to do so. Emily listened, fascinated despite herself. This wasn't how she'd imagined someone in Marcus's position would think. You sound like a business professor. I studied economics, actually, before everything changed. What changed? Marcus's expression grew distant. My father passed away when I was 23. He'd built an organization, a network of relationships and obligations, and suddenly all of that fell to me. I could have walked away, probably should have, but there were people depending on those relationships. Employees who needed their paychecks, families who relied on the stability my father's organization provided. He paused. So I stayed, learned the business, made it my own. Do you regret it? The question hung in the air between them. Emily almost took it back. It felt too personal, too probing, but Marcus seemed to be genuinely considering it. Some days, he finally said, some days I think about what life might have been like if I'd chosen differently, finished my degree, gotten a normal job, married someone nice, had kids, worried about mortgage payments and lawn maintenance. He smiled sadly. But then I remember that choice wasn't really available to me, not in any meaningful way. The moment my father died, I became a target. Walking away wouldn't have protected me. It just would have made me vulnerable. So you chose power over safety. I chose survival. The power was just a necessary tool. Emily absorbed this, trying to imagine the weight of that choice. Making decisions at 23 that would define the rest of your life. Inheriting not just wealth, but danger, obligation, and a world that operated by rules most people never even knew existed. What about you? Marcus asked, turning the question back on her. Do you regret your choices? Which ones? Coming to Philadelphia, working at the diner, putting your dreams on hold. Emily traced the rim of her coffee cup, thinking, I don't know if regret is the right word. Frustrated, maybe. Disappointed in myself for not being braver, for not taking more risks. She looked up at him. But then again, taking risks can lead to sitting in a diner at 1 a.m. with a wounded stranger. So maybe I'm doing better than I thought. Marcus laughed again, more carefully this time. I'm not sure I'm the best example of risk-taking working out well. You're alive, aren't you? Despite someone trying to ensure you wouldn't be. That counts for something. Thanks to you. Thanks to both of us, Emily corrected. You got yourself here. You survived long enough for me to find you. That takes strength. Something shifted in Marcus's expression. He looked at her with an intensity that made Emily's breath catch. Why are you being so kind to me? Really? I've given you nothing but reasons to be afraid to protect yourself, yet here you are, sitting with me, talking to me like I'm a normal person. Aren't you? You know I'm not. Emily set down her cup and met his gaze steadily. I think you're a person who's made choices I'll never fully understand, who lives in a world I'll probably never see, who's done things that would probably horrify me if I knew the details. But I also think you're someone who's trying to be better than the hand you were dealt. Someone who has principles even when those principles make life harder. Someone who's capable of gratitude and humor and honesty. She paused. That seems pretty normal to me, just wrapped in extraordinary circumstances. Marcus stared at her like she'd just revealed something profound. You have no idea how rare that is. That kind of grace. Seeing people as more than their worst moments. Everyone's more than their worst moments. Even you. Especially me, Marcus said quietly. I've had more worst moments than most. Before Emily could respond, the sound of a car engine made them both tense. Marcus was instantly alert, moving back toward the window despite the clear pain the sudden movement caused. Emily held her breath as headlights illuminated the parking lot. The car slowed, stopped directly in front of the diner. Emily's heart hammered. This was it. This was what they'd been waiting for all night. The moment when Marcus's enemies found them. But then the driver's side door opened and a woman stepped out. She was older, probably in her 60s, wearing a thick coat and sensible shoes. She walked up to the diner door, peered through the glass, then checked her watch. After a moment, she shook her head and returned to her car, driving away. Emily let out a shaky breath. What was that? Probably someone looking for an open place to eat. Forgetting that everything's closed at this hour, Marcus moved back from the window, but the tension didn't leave his shoulders. But it's a reminder. We're exposed here. Sitting ducks. So what do? Marcus checked his watch. A reflex, Emily realized, since he'd already checked it a dozen times that night. 2 more hours until dawn, then I make my calls. And until then, we wait, we watch, and we hope Vincent's people are thorough enough to search everywhere except the obvious places. The obvious places being a closed diner? Exactly. Too public. Too visible. Not the kind of place someone like me would hide. Marcus settled back into his chair by the door, but Emily could see the toll the night was taking. His movements were slower, more careful. The pain was wearing him down, minute by minute. Emily made a decision. Tell me about your organization. Help me understand what Vincent's trying to take from you. Marcus looked at her questioningly. Why? Because waiting in silence is making both of us anxious, and because I want to understand. What's worth all this? What's worth betrayal and... She gestured at his injuries. And everything that happened tonight? Marcus considered this, then began speaking. My father built a network over 30 years. He started small, collecting rent for landlords who didn't want to deal with difficult tenants, ensuring that business debts got paid, providing security for establishments that needed it. Over time, that grew into something larger, more comprehensive. A protection racket, Emily said, using the term she'd heard in movies. Protection, yes. Racket, no. The difference is consent and value. We never forced anyone into our services. We offered them, and people chose to accept or decline. And those who accepted got real protection, real problem solving, real stability. But surely not everyone pays willingly. No, Marcus admitted. Not everyone. Some people need encouragement, reminders of their obligations. But even then there are limits. Lines we don't cross. The rules you mentioned before. Exactly. No targeting families. No involving civilians who aren't part of the business. No unnecessary escalation. Handle problems efficiently but proportionally. And above all, keep your word. If you make a deal, you honor it. Marcus's voice grew harder. Vincent doesn't believe in those limits. He sees them as weakness. He thinks fear is more effective than respect. That intimidation is more efficient than negotiation. And he wants to run things his way. He wants to run things his way, Marcus confirmed. Which means everyone I've protected, every agreement I've made, every promise I've kept, all of it becomes meaningless. People get hurt. Businesses get destroyed. The whole system collapses into chaos. Emily could hear the frustration in his voice, the anger that he was keeping carefully controlled. This wasn't just about power for Marcus. It was about legacy, about responsibility, about maintaining something his father had built. You really care, she said softly, about your people, about doing this right. I care about not being worse than I have to be. There's a difference. Is there, though? Marcus turned to look at her fully. You keep trying to make me into something I'm not. A good person, a hero, and you keep trying to make yourself into something you're not. A villain without conscience, a monster. They held each other's gaze and Emily felt that spark again, that connection that transcended their different worlds. Two people seeing each other clearly, perhaps for the first time in a long time. Why do you do that? Marcus asked quietly. Do what? Look at me like I'm worth believing in. Emily thought about it. Because maybe you are, and maybe someone needs to remind you of that. Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out carefully, checked the screen, and his expression tightened. Message from one of my people. Coded. Vincent's expanding his search pattern. He's hitting every location I've ever been known to frequent. Will he think to check here? I've never been here before tonight. There's no connection, but... Marcus hesitated. Vincent's thorough when he wants to be. And desperate. If he's smart, he'll check everywhere within a certain radius of where I was last seen. And where was that? About 6 blocks from here. Emily's stomach dropped. That's close. Too close. Marcus started to stand, then stopped as pain lanced through his side. He breathed through it, jaw clenched. You need to rest, Emily insisted. even if it's just for a few minutes. You're not going to be able to defend yourself or me if you pass out from exhaustion. I can't afford to. Marcus. Emily stood and walked over to him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. 5 minutes. Close your eyes for 5 minutes. I'll keep watch. If anything happens, I'll wake you immediately. He looked up at her, and Emily could see the war happening behind his eyes, the instinct to stay alert warring with the physical reality of his limitations. Finally, he nodded. 5 minutes. 5 minutes, Emily agreed. Marcus leaned back in the chair, closing his eyes. Within seconds, his breathing deepened. Emily watched him carefully, noting how even in sleep there was a tension to his posture, ready to spring into action at the slightest threat. She moved to the window, taking up his vigil. The street outside was quiet now, that dead time between night and morning when even the city seemed to pause and take a breath. A few lights still burned in apartment windows. A lone taxi cruised past. The world continued, oblivious to the drama unfolding in one small diner. Emily thought about her life just 12 hours ago. She'd woken up in her cramped apartment, showered in a bathroom where the hot water only lasted 5 minutes, eaten leftover cereal because she hadn't had time to go grocery shopping. She'd walked to work, dodging puddles from yesterday's rain, mentally preparing herself for another day of taking orders and refilling coffee cups and smiling at customers who barely saw her as human. It had been ordinary, safe, predictable, and now here she was, standing guard while a man she'd just met slept in her diner, watching for enemies she'd never seen, caught up in a world she'd only ever imagined in movies and books. Part of her knew she should be terrified, should be planning her escape, thinking about calling the police the moment she could safely do so, should be protecting herself. But another part, a part she hadn't known existed until tonight, felt alive in a way she hadn't in years, purposeful, needed, like she was finally doing something that mattered, even if what it mattered to was just one wounded man who'd stumbled into her life by accident. You're thinking too loud, Marcus said without opening his eyes. Emily smiled. I thought you were sleeping. I was. Then I heard the wheels turning in your head. He opened his eyes, looking at her. What's troubling you? Besides the obvious? Besides the obvious. Emily came back to sit near him. I was just thinking how strange it is that this morning I was worried about making rent and whether I'd remembered to buy milk. And now I'm worried about people I've never met finding us in a closed diner. It's like I've stepped into someone else's life. You have, in a way, mine. And I'm sorry for that. Stop apologizing. If I've learned anything tonight, it's that I'm tougher than I thought I was. More capable. More, I don't know. More myself, maybe. Marcus sat up straighter, studying her face. You're not afraid anymore. Oh, I'm absolutely terrified. But it's different now. It's not paralyzing. It's just present, like background noise. That's adaptation. Your mind adjusting to new parameters of normal. Marcus smiled slightly. You'd have made a good operative. Is that a compliment? From me? Yes. Emily laughed softly. I'll take it. Though I think I'll stick with waitressing. Less likely to end up hiding in my own workplace. Fair point. They sat in companionable silence for a moment. Then Emily asked, what happens after dawn? Really? You said you'd make calls, but then what? Marcus was quiet, choosing his words carefully. I have people I trust. Not many, but a few. They'll help me get to a secure location. From there, I can coordinate a response to Vincent's move. A response? That sounds very corporate for what I'm guessing is actually quite dangerous. Everything in my world sounds more corporate than it is. Cleaner, more civilized. But yes, it will be dangerous for me, for my people. For anyone Vincent decides is valuable as leverage. Emily's chest tightened. Including me. Including you. Which is why the first thing I do is make sure you're protected. That you're moved somewhere safe with people watching over you until this is resolved. How long will that take? Days. Maybe weeks. It depends on how deeply Vincent's betrayal runs. How many people he's turned. How much support he has from other organizations. Weeks, Emily repeated. I can't hide for weeks. I have a job, rent, a life. Emily, I know what you're going to say. That my life won't matter if I'm not alive to live it. But Marcus, you have to understand. This diner, my apartment, my routine, it's not much, but it's mine. It's the life I've built. I can't just abandon it. Marcus reached out, taking her hand in his. The gesture was unexpected, gentle despite the calluses she could feel on his palm. I won't let anything happen to you, I promise you that. Whatever it takes, wherever you need to go, whatever resources you need, you'll have them. You'll be safe. And then what? I just go back to my normal life, pretend none of this happened? If that's what you want, yes. Emily looked down at their joined hands. His was so much larger than hers, warm and solid and real. What if that's not what I want? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications neither of them was quite ready to examine. Marcus's eyes searched her face. What are you saying? I don't know exactly. Emily struggled to articulate the feeling growing inside her. I feel like I've been sleepwalking through my life, going through the motions, waiting for something to happen, for something to change. And now something has. You've happened. This has happened. And I don't want to go back to sleepwalking. Emily, you can't. Marcus stopped, seeming to struggle with his own thoughts. You can't get involved in my world. It's not romantic or exciting. It's dangerous and ugly and it destroys people. Good people. People like you. I'm not asking to join your organization or whatever you call it. I'm just saying, maybe there's a middle ground between going back to exactly how things were and diving completely into your world. What kind of middle ground? I don't know yet, but I think we could figure it out. Together. Marcus was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're honorable, even when honor is costly. I know you protect people who depend on you. I know you're capable of gratitude and kindness. I know you'd rather hurt yourself than put me in danger. Emily squeezed his hand. That's more than I've known about some people I've dated for months. Despite everything, Marcus laughed. This is possibly the strangest conversation I've ever had. Welcome to my world. Everything's strange at 3 in the morning. They both looked at the clock. 3:17 a.m. Dawn was still hours away, but somehow it felt closer now, like they'd crossed some invisible threshold from night into the anticipation of morning. Tell me something, Emily said. Something real, something you don't tell people. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Haven't I told you enough for one night? Tell me something not about your business or your father or Vincent. Tell me about you. Marcus, the person, not Marcus the boss. He thought about it for so long that Emily almost took the question back. Then quietly he said, I play piano. Or I used to before everything got so complicated. Classical music mostly. Chopin, Debussy, Rachmaninoff. When I was younger I thought maybe I'd study music. Perform maybe or teach. Emily tried to picture it. This dangerous, powerful man sitting at a piano, coaxing beauty from keys. Somehow, it fit. Why did you stop? No time. No space for it in the life I ended up living. You can't exactly maintain the kind of focus music requires when you're constantly watching your back, dealing with problems, managing crises. He smiled sadly. Though sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I'll sit at the piano in my apartment and play. Just for myself. Just to remember what it felt like to create something beautiful instead of just managing chaos. That's not nothing, Emily said softly. That matters. Does it? Yes. Because it means you're not just the life you've been forced to live. You're also the life you dreamed of living. And maybe someday, when all this is over, you'll have space for that again. Marcus looked at her with such intensity that Emily felt her breath catch. You're extraordinary, you know that? The way you see the world, the way you see people. Me. I'm just a waitress who happened to look in the right alley at the right time. No, you're so much more than that. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Emily couldn't quite name. Not romance, not exactly, but connection, understanding, the recognition that two people from completely different worlds had somehow found common ground in the strangest of circumstances. Then Marcus's phone buzzed again, shattering the moment. He checked it, and his expression went cold. We have a problem. What kind of problem? Vincent's people were spotted 3 blocks from here, 15 minutes ago. He stood moving to the window. They're doing a systematic search, building by building. Emily's heart began to race again. Will they come here? Eventually. It's only a matter of time. Marcus turned to face her, and there was steel in his eyes now. The vulnerability of moments before was gone, replaced by the calculating mind of someone who'd survived countless threats. We need a plan. What kind of plan? The kind where you survive this, no matter what happens to me. Marcus, listen to me. He crossed to her, taking both her hands in his. If they come here, if they find us, you play dumb. You tell them I forced my way in, that you were scared, that you don't know anything. You're just a waitress who got caught up in something beyond her control. I'm not leaving you. You're not leaving me. You're surviving. There's a difference. His grip tightened. Promise me, Emily. promise me that if it comes down to it, you'll protect yourself first. Emily wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that she wasn't going to abandon him after everything. But looking into his eyes, seeing the desperate need there for her to agree, she found herself nodding. I promise. Good. Marcus released her hands and moved back to the window, his entire body on high alert now. Emily could see the transformation, the way he'd shifted from the man who played piano and talked about dreams deferred to someone dangerous, someone capable of handling whatever came through that door. And as she watched him standing guard in her diner, protecting her from threats she'd never imagined, Emily realized something that should have terrified her but somehow didn't. She trusted him, completely, with her life. Outside, the first hints of pre-dawn light were beginning to touch the eastern sky. Not much longer now until dawn, until Marcus could make his calls, until this long, strange, transformative night would end. But first, they had to survive what came next. And in the parking lot, barely visible in the darkness, 3 shadows detached themselves from a car and began moving toward the diner. Marcus moved swiftly toward the back room, positioning himself where he could see both exits. Emily's heart pounded as the shadows approached the front door. Then one of them knocked. A specific pattern. 3 short, 2 long, 1 short. Marcus's entire body relaxed. It's mine, he said, moving to unlock the door. 2 men entered quickly, both wearing dark clothing and serious expressions. The older one, gray-haired and compact, nodded to Marcus. Boss, we got your signal. Carter, Davis. Marcus greeted them with visible relief. Status? Vincent hit 3 of your locations overnight. He's consolidating power fast, telling everyone you're gone. Carter's eyes flickered to Emily, then back to Marcus. He's also put word out about a witness, someone who helped you escape. Emily's blood ran cold. Marcus's jaw tightened. How much does he know? Just that someone pulled you from the scene. No description, no location. But he's looking. Marcus turned to Emily. This is why you need protection. Now. There's more, Davis added. Vincent called a meeting with the other families for tonight. He's trying to legitimize his takeover. Then we don't have much time. Marcus pulled out his phone, making a quick call. He spoke in clipped, coded language, then hung up. I'm calling the meeting myself. This ends today. Carter raised an eyebrow. You sure you're up for that? I don't have a choice. Marcus looked at Emily. But first, we get her somewhere safe. Emily stepped forward. What if I don't go? All 3 men stared at her. Marcus shook his head. Emily, hear me out. Vincent doesn't know who I am or where I am. But if you suddenly move me, if people start appearing around me, that draws attention, makes me visible. She took a breath, steadying herself. What if I stay here? Act normal. Open the diner like always. I'm just a waitress. Invisible. That's actually smart, Carter said slowly. Hidden in plain sight. Marcus looked torn. It's too risky. Everything's risky now, Emily countered. But this way I'm doing what I always do, nothing suspicious, and you can focus on handling Vincent. The first rays of sunrise broke through the windows, painting everything gold. Marcus studied Emily's face for a long moment, and she could see the internal battle he was fighting. We keep 2 people watching the diner at all times, he finally said. Any sign of Vincent's people, they pull you out immediately. And when this is over, we have a serious conversation about your definition of safe. Emily smiled despite everything. Deal. Carter cleared his throat. Boss, we need to move. The meeting's at 8 tonight. That gives us 12 hours to prepare. Marcus nodded, then turned back to Emily. He took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. Thank you. For everything. For saving my life. For not running when you should have. For seeing something in me worth protecting. You did the same for me, Emily said softly. When this is over, we'll figure out what comes next. Together. Something passed between them. Understanding. Possibility. The recognition that their lives had become irrevocably intertwined. Marcus stepped back reluctantly. Stay alert. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. I will. The 3 men moved toward the door. Marcus paused at the threshold, looking back at her one more time. Then they were gone, disappearing into the morning light. Emily stood alone in the empty diner, the sun streaming through the windows, the city waking up around her. Everything looked the same as it had yesterday morning, but nothing would ever be the same again. She took a deep breath, tied on her apron, and unlocked the front door. Time to face whatever came next. The day passed in surreal normalcy. Emily served coffee, took orders, smiled at regulars who had no idea that her world had tilted on its axis just hours before, but she felt the watchful presence of Marcus's people, a man reading a newspaper by the window, a woman in a parked car across the street, guardians in the shadows. At 3 p.m. her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number, meeting in progress. Stay alert. Emily's hands shook as she poured coffee for table 6. The afternoon stretched endlessly. Every customer who entered made her pulse spike. Every car that slowed outside drew her attention, but nothing happened. The diner remained a bubble of ordinary life, while somewhere across the city, Marcus was facing his betrayer. At 7:47 p.m., as Emily was wiping down the counter for closing, her phone rang. It's over. Marcus's voice was tired but steady. Vincent's been removed from power. The other families sided with me once they heard the evidence of his actions. He's been exiled from the city. Emily sank onto a stool, relief flooding through her. You're okay? I'm okay. Better than okay. A pause. Can I come see you? Yes, please. 20 minutes later, the bell above the door chimed. Marcus walked in, looking exhausted but whole. His suit was fresh, his injuries hidden beneath careful bandaging, but Emily could see the toll the day had taken in his eyes. They stood facing each other across the empty diner. You did it, Emily said. We did it. Your idea? Staying visible, acting normal. It kept you safe, kept Vincent from having leverage. Marcus moved closer, and it gave me the clarity I needed. Knowing you were protected, that you'd made a smart choice. It let me focus on what needed to be done, which was proving that Vincent broke every rule our world operates by, showing the other leaders that his way leads to chaos, making them choose between stability and destruction. He smiled slightly. Turns out most people prefer stability. Emily came around the counter. What happens now? Now I rebuild, strengthen the organization, make sure this doesn't happen again. Marcus reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. And I figure out how to thank the woman who saved my life. You already did. You kept me safe. You trusted me to make my own choices. I want to do more than that. His hand lingered near her face. I want to be in your life, Emily. If you'll let me. I know it's complicated, I know our worlds are different, but last night talking with you I remembered what it felt like to be seen as a person, not just a position. You gave me that gift. Emily's heart raced. I want that too, but I need something from you. Anything. Don't try to change me. Don't try to pull me fully into your world or push me completely out of it. Let me be myself, waitress, dreamer, whatever that means, while we figure out what this is between us. Marcus smiled, genuine and warm. I wouldn't dream of changing you. You're perfect exactly as you are. He leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. It wasn't romantic passion. Not yet. It was promise, possibility, the beginning of something neither of them had expected. So what's next? Emily asked. Tomorrow you work your shift. I handle my business. And tomorrow night, if you're willing, I take you to dinner. A real date. No danger, no drama. Just two people getting to know each other. That sounds perfect. Marcus moved toward the door, then paused. Emily, thank you. For everything. You already said that. I'll probably say it 1,000 more times. After he left, Emily locked up the diner and walked home through the Philadelphia night. The city looked different now, full of possibility instead of just routine. She'd started yesterday as a waitress with deferred dreams. She was ending today as a woman who'd found courage she didn't know she had, who'd connected with someone extraordinary, who'd proven to herself that she was capable of so much more than she'd believed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time in years, Emily couldn't wait to see what came next.